This episode of Insight features Dr. David Macfarlane, another St Andrews physicist. Our interview spans the perks of academia, what he finds people appreciate about science communication and outreach, and what's the best way to spend a free morning. Enjoy listening! You're listening to Insight, the University of St Andrews Student Physics Society's podcast. I'm your host, Samuel Avery. Join us as we journey into the lives of St Andrews academics, discovering their passions, inspirations, and motivations. So today on Insight, we're interviewing Dr. David Macfarlane. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
A physicist here at the University of St Andrews. And could you tell us a bit about what you do here?
Okay, well, I'm a senior research fellow, which basically means I'm postdoctoral research. I've been doing that for 15 years now in St Andrews. And I work in the millimetre wave group, which is an instrumentation group essentially split into two parts. One half is spectroscopy, but the half I work on is radar work basically. And this is the kind of radar that's very high frequency, which means that you can image things essentially. You can get, rather than the great big radar dishes that you might see in, I don't know, air traffic control or weather radar or something, we've got small equipment, higher frequency, shorter wavelength, which means you can really get smaller pieces of equipment that can image things. So we use them for looking at volcanoes and security imaging and high resolution scans and that kind of thing.
Awesome. And what path led you to this position then?
Okay, so I guess in everybody's career they have to some extent there's a bit of luck and a bit of chance involved. I mean, essentially I decided that I have a kind of long and tortured history in that I actually did an original degree back in the early 90s when you still got grants, and made a bit of a mess of that, and I had to come back and do it all again at St Andrews. So I was originally at Glasgow, and then I came to St Andrews to redo an undergraduate degree. So I have two undergraduate degrees, which is pretty unusual. A Bachelor of Science ordinary from Glasgow, and then I had to study theoretical physics here in St Andrews, and I was a waster in the first degree, but a sort of grade A student in the second degree. So when I'm teaching, I feel I've got students coming and going because I know what the behaviour is like in both respects. But it was theoretical physics that I decided I wanted to do, and I was very interested in the world of quantum, general relativity, and all that kind of thing. But while I was here, I guess the chance part was I ended up doing a summer project with the millimetre wave group. Working on fixing an interferometer as well. I did back in 97, 98. And from that, essentially, I moved away from the theoretical side of things and started getting into the fun of learning how to put things together and take them apart, and ended up doing a PhD with the group, which was in thermal imaging. And from there, it led on to the Avtis volcano postdoc work, which was perfect at the time because it was like what I had done in my PhD, but it was technically more challenging. And also involved for the first time field work. And at that point, when I started getting out of the lab and into the real world, I actually discovered that I really enjoyed that. And theoretical physics was a great base from which I can apply to all this fieldwork stuff. But getting outside is always great. Even just going out and doing fieldwork round about the North Haw and Fife. It never quite feels like real work when you're getting paid to sort of stroll about and do stuff, rather than sitting at a desk kind of withered over your equations.
Excellent. So quite a roundabout fashion to where you got to.
Yeah.
Excellent. So what's your favourite thing in or about your field of research then? Is it the fieldwork?
Probably. I think the very crux of what it is that hooks me in what I do is I really, really enjoy imaging. So building equipment where you can form an image of something. Like when I did my PhD, the first image I ever made was of a cup of coffee because it was a thermal imager. And millimetre waves are essentially like, you can do thermal imaging with infrared, but millimetre wave, the wavelength is longer, so you can see through things a bit better. You don't quite get the same resolution. But that first image, I could go and pull it out of my thesis. It's a terrible image. It's just an abysmal image. But it was something that I'd physically put together myself, and you could actually make this image of, you could see the background was cold, and then there's this blob that was this cup of coffee. And I was kind of like, wow, I actually built that. I didn't buy it from a sort of electronics place or anything. It was like, I actually put this all together and worked it all out, and it actually makes an image. And I suppose the other end of that scale is, anytime we do field work, you're always trying to, what else can I point this radar at and see what it looks like? Because you don't know, you never quite know what you're going to see, And probably the high point of all that was the first time we got the volcano imager to work. like up in the volcano, scanning a thermal image of the volcano. You're thinking, well, nobody's ever done this before at this frequency. Nobody's ever looked at, this first picture of the volcano. I think that's pretty cool to go, well, nobody has ever done that before. It makes you feel pretty good. Yeah.
It's very cool. So it's this imaging in the real world.
Yeah.
But you can't quite tell how many sugars were in the coffee.
No, it barely looked like a cup, if I was honest. But it was, just that feeling that I made it. It was cool.
Very satisfying. So what's the most frustrating hardware or software problem that you've encountered then?
Oh, that is a tricky one. I mean, part of the job is dealing with frustrating hardware and software problems. I mean, I could sit here for half an hour and tell you about all the different problems I've had to sort over the years. Fixing the radar with bits of tin foil from the hotel kitchen in the field and that kind of thing. But actually, the most frustrating technical problem I've had is, and it still isn't quite solved, is locating the radar data on the map. So it's already good. You've got a radar, you point it at whatever scene you want to do, you scan it, you get a 3D map back. But then you've got to take that data and use it. You have to say, well, where is that in the real world? And what we do is we put out reflectors in the field, GPS those positions, and then measure the positions of the reflectors with the radar as well. So you've basically got two frames of reference, the GPS frame of reference and the radar frame of reference, and you simply put them together to then figure out which way the radar is pointing, and then from that you can place the data in the real world. So that's, in principle, I've just explained it, but in practice, that is an absolute nightmare. It's been something we've been fighting with for 10, 12 years, something like that. And we've got it working. I mean, it works, but it's how accurately does it work? You want to be able to plonk the data down the map to within a few tens of centimeters probably, because that's the limit of what the GPS will give you. But something in those equations is just, you have some sets of data it works for perfectly, and then you have these occasional weird pieces of data where it just kind of, there's one literal example where the mountain turns upside down after the transforms. So you've used these reflectors to figure out what transforms you need to rotate the radar data into the sort of GPS coordinates, and it all works perfectly for the reflectors, and then the mountain goes plop and it's upside down. And you're thinking something. So it'll be something in the code. It'll be some tiny little error somewhere. But these kind of tracking these things down and these errors down is really soul destroying sometimes. Why isn't it working?
So what's the tool that you'd like to see designed then to help you with your work? Would it be the data to real life matcher upper?
Ooh. Well, I suppose if you were saying what would I most like to see in our field is the cost to come down. This is the problem with our instruments. A simple analogous way is, you think of your megapixel phone and your camera phone, and you just can't do that with millimetre waves. Each pixel costs, say, £10,000. Say, so if you're going to make a megapixel camera, you could do it. You could build, 1,000 by 1,000 array of 10,000 per pixel elements, but that's going to be a pretty expensive camera. People have done that kind of thing, but that's a kind of one-off big budget thing. So it'd be fantastic if the cost came down. I mean, do you know what I really want to see? I really want to see video rate radar of pyroclastic flow. That'd be lovely. If you could actually have video rate three-dimensional imaging of the surface of an eruption column coming down the volcano, and you can see all the stuff inside. There's nothing physical to stop that. It's just a cost thing. So yeah, let's get CCDs for radar. That's what I want.
Does sound pretty cool. So where's the most exotic place that you've travelled then as an academic for your work?
Ooh.
Not family holidays.
Not family holidays. It doesn't get very far. I've practically never been out of Scotland, but work-wise, I've got to say Montserrat in the Caribbean, because that's where we've been working for a long time with the it's British, the observatory out there. We've got a long-standing working relationship with. It's been about 15 years I've been going there. I've lost count of how many times I've been, but it's somewhere in the region of 12, 13, 14 visits. The last time I counted up, I'd been out there for 6 months of my life in total. So it's probably up about 8 months now, something like that. And it's just a great place. It's full of, and I've got to know people there as well. I mean, there's only 3,000 people live there, so you pretty quickly get to know people in a place that's that small. But I always say that one of the great boons of academia is you do get to travel to some fantastic places. I mean, Montserrat's one of them, but I've also been to Central America, I've been to Alaska, I've been to Hawaii, Japan, all over Europe, Finland, just all over the place. So if you like traveling, then it can be a pretty good gig to get into.
If you like traveling, become an airline pilot or an academic.
Yeah, but then you just see airline pilot hotel rooms,
Okay, go for academic then.
Yeah.
So what's something about Scotland that you appreciate more for your traveling? Or something that you think we could improve on?
That's a different question. Appreciate more in what context? In the sense of
I don't know, like
career, worky,
anything. You like the scenery better in other countries. You think Scotland could could do with more Caribbean food, or
no, that sounds really bad. I like Caribbean food. In fact, they have the fantastically named goat water in Montserrat, which is their national dish, which doesn't sound very appetizing. It sounds like something that the goat passed. Would you like some goat water? It's actually fantastic. It's essentially a very thick goat stew, which is remarkably like royal game soup if you've tried your Scottish cuisine. So anyway, I've come back to Montserrat rather than Scotland. I don't know. Scotland's fantastic. I'm a very kind of proud, patriotic Scot. So I love the scenery and the history and the culture and the society here as much as anything else. So I don't know about improve on things, but we could get a bit political there, which I don't really want to. So.
Yeah, maybe avoid that. As part of your work, you also do a lot of science outreach as well in local communities and such. So what's the greatest issue in science communication? Or the most frustrating thing?
Okay, the most frustrating thing is that, and this is true, it's true here, but it's also true, frankly, throughout the sort of higher education, is that it's not very well organised in the sense that, and I think it's difficult to organise, but say you're a school teacher and you want to get a talk on some subject, who do you go to? How do you approach your university and say, okay, if you get anybody that'd like to come out and give a talk on, I don't know, quantum mechanics or volcanoes or whatever, and I think it's difficult for people to find that point of contact. So I think the vast majority of time, outreach actually happens to people knowing people. It's like, well, here's an example. My daughter's music teacher the other day said, I hear you do school talks. My daughter is a teacher in Edinburgh. Could you go to her school? So there's a lot of that. Well, if I'm going to go and do outreach, I might as well go and do as a favour for a friend of a friend or that kind of thing. So it's not very well organised in that sense.
So it's a lot of human organisation.
Yeah.
You need more organisational organisation.
Yeah. But in terms of, I've maybe preempted your question, in terms of getting it to work, in terms of the single big, so you said I've done a lot of outreach. I've started about 2008 doing serious outreach, like fully funded projects to get, it was basically on millimetre waves in the electromagnetic spectrum imaging out there. And at the start of the project, we had EPSRC, which is the funding body, the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council. They said, you should get, you didn't say you should get, you said you should think about getting science communicators in. So you should you should figure out what science you want to communicate, and then we can train people to be the people that go to schools and talk about it. And we kind of thought, well, doesn't seem kind of right. We'll have a crack at it ourselves. And what we did do was rather than train people in the science, we got training in. So we had a few days where we had sort of public speaking people came up to St Andrews, and we had a couple of days in Theatre A. In fact, it was so long ago, it was the old Theatre A. It was still the wooden benches. But it was great. It was really, really good. And what they did was they showed us about, over the 2 days, the thing that sticks in my mind was they showed us half a dozen videos of people doing it really badly, like how not to speak to kids in the public and such like. And also as part of that process, we got feedback. So when we did start going out to schools and doing exhibitions, we had independent people following it up and interviewing the kids and the public and saying, what did you like, what did you not like? And the biggest piece of feedback we always got was that the public and kids really appreciate talking to the actual scientist. That was always the thing that they liked. And sort of back to front, as scientists, we tend to get trained throughout our careers that we need to take ourselves out of the picture. So, you want to evaluate everything on evidence-based data and logical assumptions, and the fact that it's you or me or whoever doing the analysis is irrelevant. So most scientific talks you go to, you'll never see a picture of the person doing the job, or people just take that out completely, and that's the one thing that people want to see. So I think it's kind of bled back into my professional talks now that compared to other talks, I always have a few pictures of what I'm doing, and this is me doing what I do, and that kind of thing. So if you want to have successful science communication, remember to talk about your actual self. It can be quite hard for scientists to do. Anyway.
So yeah, I was going to ask, what's something that academics should hold themselves to when communicating science in public?
I mean, people really. I think a lot of people, and it's easy to forget, they don't really know what scientists do. They can't at the level of, well, what do you sit at a desk? Do you use a computer, or do you go when you go to the lab? What do you actually do? And why do you do it, and why do you like it? If you can get that stuff across, then that's far better than actually trying to convey the content of the science that you're interested in. I think enthusing people by showing that it excites you is the best way, and how hopefully get your enthusiasm across. Seems to have worked. We always got good feedback and good scores. So.
Okay, so it's making sure that you say, I do want to do science, and here's the reason why.
Yeah.
Okay. And should science communicators be on the cutting edge of knowledge in their field? How much eminence in their field should be required, do you think?
Ooh. Well, this is where, my answer to the last question, the other big advantage of not having a science communicator, not having trained somebody up, was when you were then asked the analogy I always used was, so I could talk all about volcano imaging and radar and Montserrat and stuff, and then the first question from a child in the audience could be, what's it like in the helicopter? So if somebody could have learned all about the sort of academics, and they'd be like, oh, I don't know. Whereas if you're the person, you've got the experience, you can just answer that. You can say, hot and loud,
So it's maybe not being on the cutting edge so much as being active in the field itself.
Yeah, and having that experience. Although it's great at our outreach, we really did. We were right at the front edge of the security imaging and stuff. We had access to the field, and we knew people in the field that could give us when you go to the airport and you have to stick your arms in there and walk through the booth. That thing. I mean, I know the guys that invented that, so they were generous enough to give us some of the raw imagery from inside, which is from one of the early prototypes. But it just showed you exactly what those things see, which you never actually, people using it don't see that now, so because of privacy issues. So being able to illustrate things by saying, look, we know the guys that actually make it. Again, that's people like, the people that did it. People are always interested in that. So.
Okay. So as a scientist who does outreach, but you're research focused, what do you think of science communicators such as like Brian Cox, who spend considerable portions of their time focusing on that communication? Is that like a good thing or a bad thing?
I think there's a place for everybody. I mean, personally, I'm not. Brian. The thing with Brian Cox is, and this is slightly anecdotal, right? Is that basically he's managed to explain science to like my parents' generation, is what I find. And as soon as he kind of came on the scene and became famous, he did a very good job, because my parents, who are not educated in science at all, they just didn't have a background in it. They would then start telling me things that he'd told them, and I was like, I've been trying to tell you about this for 20 years, but you never listen, because you go, oh, that science stuff's too hard. So in that respect, he's done a good job with a non-science audience, I guess, as far as I can tell. But I don't particularly follow him myself,
Okay, well, the next question is, do you have a favorite science communicator? Not Brian, but Jane Goodall or David Attenborough, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Take your pick.
From your list, I mean, I've seen by far the most David Attenborough stuff. He's really good. I mean, who doesn't like David Attenborough? I mean, how can you?
National treasure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you never hear anybody going, "Oh yeah, I love science," but except for that David Attenborough bloke, he's a bit rotten. No, I mean, he's just fantastic. Really, have you read his biography?
I've not.
No, it's really worth a read. It's really entertaining. I'm not going to go off on that, but there's a lot of humor, especially the early days. Sort of like. We went to go and see the Komodo dragon, says David Attenborough to his boss, and he goes, oh, okay, David, here's £2,000, try not to be more than 6 months. And that was it. That was the planning for this international expedition. So.
Okay. So.
Sorry, I do like the thing that he does that for continuity. He basically packs sort of 7 pairs of the same clothes. So it's like he basically has sort of khaki trousers and a blue shirt, and he has a whole bunch of them. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it takes all the hassle out of like what am I going to wear today? That'll do me. So.
Pro tips are in the field.
Yeah.
So obviously science communication is about making sure the voice of scientists is heard, but do you think that scientists should be more politically involved in their areas to make sure that their voices are heard on a government and organisational level?
There are mechanisms there for that. I mean, we do have, National Scientists of Scotland and that kind of thing. I mean, everybody wants their own little bit of science to be, politically higher, which means more money, which means more research and more jobs. So, although I have found it interesting in the kind of post-Brexit type era, the argument about science has been, I would say, in the mainstream media. I don't know about you watching it back. I haven't really noticed much at all about science. I think I can go looking for it and find it myself. But I think in the general kind of public, that kind of question of, well, what's going to happen to all the, how is research funding going to work once we leave the EU, doesn't seem to be a question that people particularly care about. So maybe we should be more politically, bang our own drum a bit more.
To make sure that it is heard and is represented. Yeah. So moving on to a more general set of questions, what is something that you would change about your student days?
I'm a great believer that I wouldn't change anything because, as I said, I had one degree of being really quite a waster and having an excellent time. I really did have a good time in Glasgow University, and then when I came back to St Andrews, I was I basically studied constantly. I did all my partying in the first one, all my studying in the second one. So in some ways, I think I missed out on. You should really mix and match those things at the correct ratio in one degree rather than spreading them out over two. But I'm a great believer that you can't look back and think, well, what would I change? I'm quite happy with. If I'd done my first degree successfully, then I might have gone off into career in something else, and then I never would have ended up spending years running around Montserrat surveying volcanoes. So what's for you won't go by you, as my granny used to say.
Excellent. So what's the closest to a deadline that you've worked on something as a student?
As a student?
Obviously, you're on top of things now, but as a student?
Obviously, I'm on top of things now. I'll give you. I can remember I'll do that. As a student, closest to a deadline, probably to within the hour. I can't specifically remember something in that respects. I certainly know that I do remember at one outreach event, the Sapphire radar we have for scanning the room, the high resolution one. I was literally finishing the code in the exhibition hall, and in the corner of my eye I could see the school class coming in, and I'm literally kind of finishing off the last thing and then going compile, and just fingers crossed, because if it didn't, then you're going to have a bit of a, but it did, it worked, and it was and it's just that kind of, that sense that, the people you're talking to have no idea how close to
yes,
how close to how close to it just being completed they were. To you they've probably this thing's been around for years, but no, it's been working for approximately 32 seconds.
Excellent, that was been very satisfying. So how would you treat your lecturers differently if you were a student now?
My lecturers differently. I don't know how to treat them now. I did treat them very differently when I first went to university in Glasgow. Lecturers were kind of another, they weren't anything like me. I was quite young when I went to university the first time. I was only 17, and I just didn't have any relation to them at all. I remember when I came to St Andrews, I kind of changed my mindset, and I thought of my lecturers and my tutors as being, well, I'm here to learn, and I'm not supposed to magically know everything. I have to work for it. I have to go and study and stuff. But if I can't understand something, then go and talk to my lecturer, go and talk to my tutor and say, look, I've tried this. And your lecturers will see, if you go to a lecturer and say, I don't understand, please tell, then that's not really helpful for them. But if you said, look, I've tried this and I'm just not getting it, then that's a much better starting point, because then they can see, right, what your thinking is. And I have to say, lecturers and tutors were great. They would normally, with that, they would respond and actually, teach me stuff, which is great. That's all you want when you're teaching, is just an inquiring mind to ask you questions. It's better for everybody, rather than that horrible silence you get in tutorials. So what did everybody think of last week's question one? And then silence. No good. Ask questions. It's much better.
Excellent. So it's that having the relationship rather than having
and treating the whole, I don't know, treating the whole thing as a bit more kind of a conversation rather than you're the teacher and I'm the learner.
So what's one of the small things that you appreciate in life?
Ooh.
The dew on the morning grass, or the rise of the sun.
Okay, so everything in life.
It could be anything.
Absolutely anything. I do like a little bit of quiet time sometimes, but exactly that kind of I do enjoy being outdoors, which I sometimes wonder why I took theoretical physics, because I've rediscovered fieldwork. But yeah, I'm a great one for sitting, just trying to take the time to actually appreciate those moments rather than just rushing by everything, busy all the time. I've seen so many things on my travels, and the last time I was in Montserrat, I saw the green flash for the first time, which was pretty cool.
The green flash?
You don't know the green flash?
No.
The green flash is it's an optical effect in the atmosphere, just like when the sun's setting, just as it goes over the horizon, or the image of it goes over the horizon, if you want to be more physicsy about it, then the diffraction of light through the atmosphere can just, if you imagine, as the spectrums come around, you just see the last bit of it, the green. The atmosphere has to be right to block out. I'm not sure the sad details now, but the atmosphere has to be just right. But you get, as it just goes, you get this flash of green.
Oh, fantastic!
It's pretty rare, but so I saw it for the first time, and on the day we'd stuck the radar back in the hill, so I took that as a good omen for once.
Excellent, excellent. So, has your sense of style improved with time? Can you recall like a style in your past that you look back on with serious regret?
What sort of style are we talking here? Like fashion style? I've never been fashionable, so which I think you could say of many scientists, I guess. They don't really. I think you pick a style and stick with it. I don't think I've changed that much. I kind of go with I like the David Attenborough thing. I've just picked some clothes that you're going to regularly wear, and then you don't have to think about it from here on in. So, hopefully I don't look too shabby.
I think the classic scientist thing is to pick like one little ornament or whatever, and then like make that your thing.
We had this will be going out, so apologies, Professor Reedy, if you ever hear this. But I do remember like Peter Reedy. He had a style of clothes that when I was a student was from the previous decade, and I remember thinking, where did he get the clothes? Because you can't buy them anymore. But I think it's just there must be little mysterious shops and places that sort of sell physicists fashions from 10 years ago so that they can stay in fashion.
Excellent. So, what's your favorite hobby?
Hobby. I guess I spend I spend a lot. I've got 2 kids and a wife, so I spend a lot of time just doing family stuff, which is great fun. I guess the thing I probably do the most by myself outside of family and work is following for my sins the Scotland football and rugby teams. So I do like that's probably the one time I really leave all the kind of work and stuff behind is travelling to watch rugby and football. I certainly don't do it for the enjoyment of watching teams win at sport, but I get a lot of fun out of the friends I've got there. I'm one of the youngsters in the group with that mob, which is quite good. Working at a university where there's lots of students around, it's quite nice to go somewhere where there's not any young people, actually, bizarrely. But yeah, it's my main hobby.
Excellent. So, what's the dream sports match or tournament that you would make if you could pick the teams?
The dream I'd just like to see Scotland back at the World Cup. That'll do me fine. It's been way too long. 1998 was the last, and so what age was I then? I was 20-something. And I remember, should we go to France to watch the World Cup? And I remember saying, no, we can't afford it. I'll go to the next one. So it's been a while. But yeah, no, I've been to some pretty spectacular Scotland games. Been to Wembley a few times. I was at Hampden the other week. Still got the scar from the goal celebrations.
But presumably you've got a nice nest egg set aside for when Scotland get back in the World Cup now. You put that money away for a rainy day. And
well, I wish, but we're not out of it yet. It might be in Russia next year, maybe. Although one of my mates pointed out, we'll probably find if we do make it to Russia, we'll be in the far-flung side of Russia. That will be, away in the sticks somewhere, and Yeah.
Well, fingers crossed for us.
Yeah.
What's the worst TV show or movie or performance that you've had to endure for a friend's sake? So is it like a children's movie that you've had to take the kids to see, or is your friends really wanted to go to?
That's a really good question, because normally, frankly, I don't endure things. I don't have those kind of friends. You're drawing a blank for me here. I don't. If it's going to be that bad, I'll make my excuses and leave. I think is the truth.
Do you go in for like a polite excuse, like, "Oh, doctor's appointment," or are you just like, "No"?
Oh no, I'd be fair. I prefer reasonable honesty. You know, I'd be like, "No, that's okay. If you're watching this, that's fine. I'm going to go do something else." You know. Yeah.
Fair enough. Probably the best way. So, what's your ideal way to spend like a free afternoon? If you just have like a free day, exciting time, what'd you do?
The last time I had this is quite sad, but the last time I had a free morning was a few weekends ago, where actually I went and I sat and had a cup of coffee in a coffee house and I read a book. How exciting is that? It was a biography on Maxwell. He said, trying to sound like he's a big physics guy. I haven't read a lot of physics biographies recently, but it was just pleasant to just while away the morning with a cup of coffee and reading about something I didn't know too much about. So
lovely. It does sound a good morning.
Yeah.
So we're moving on to quick fire questions now.
Okay.
So you can answer these a bit quicker, but obviously take time to explain if you wish to do so. So what's your favourite non-academic book?
Ooh, non-academic book. Oh, goodness gracious.
And no textbooks, please.
I thought Lord of the Rings straight away, but that's really boring and cliched answer. So I'll go with I'll be obscure and I'll go with Zenith by Grant Morrison, which is a 2000 AD story from many years ago. There you go.
Okay, can't say I've heard of it myself.
No, I wouldn't expect you to.
So, what is your favourite genre of music and song?
Okay, genre I guess is going to be rock. Song, I can't pick a single song. I can't. There's just too many songs. I'm a bit of an old rock dinosaur. I listen to pretty much anything. Having said that, really anything. And I know people say they're quite eclectic, but I kind of believe that you can listen to any type of music and there'll be a good example of it. I really can't pick a song, Sam. I don't know. The last music thing I did do, I went to see Iron Maiden a few weeks ago. There you go. Let's go Run to the Hills. There you go.
Run to the Hills.
For the
Iron Maiden. What's the first concert that you went to?
Oh God, the first concert I ever went to was by a band called Acid Rain, in I don't know how well you know Glasgow, but is the garage still in Glasgow?
Yes.
Yeah, it was in the garage in about 1988. I was technically not old enough to be consuming alcohol on the premises that day.
So I'm sure you didn't, of course.
No.
So what's your favourite board game?
Let's go with Talisman. Talisman. Yeah. Never heard of Talisman?
Nope.
No, that's probably because it's been out of print for a long time. But it's a good game. Very good.
Okay. How good are you at trivia and pub quizzes?
Depends on the subject matter. If it's going to be about popular culture, i.e., reality programs and that kind of thing, then I'm going to come last. But if it ignores that kind of stuff, then I'll do okay.
Okay, fair to middling. Would you rather learn another human language or another programming language?
Programming.
Do you know any other human languages?
No.
No, fair enough.
I barely know English.
What's your favourite pub and drink in St Andrews?
In St Andrews, I was probably going to be the Cellar Bar. It's the only place we always end up there. And yeah. And I drink vodka. Note to students, vodka. Yeah. I've had some very generous gifts over the years from students, and they normally bring in a bottle of wine, which is lovely, but I can't drink wine. So my wife's done very well out of students over the years, so I come home with, here's a bottle of wine for you. Oh, that's very nice.
What's your favourite type of takeaway?
Singapore fried rice. There you go.
Singapore fried rice.
It's very nice.
And what's your favourite thing to cook?
Similar, actually. I have a few different recipes, but I tend to work on varieties of stir fry or fried rice. It's a lot of frying here, I've noticed.
Just playing to the Scottish stereotype, totally.
Yeah.
So this is the final question. So do you think there needs to be a stronger crossover between theoretical and experimental physics? Because obviously you went from theoretical to experiment, but you think it's good to have that mix?
I suppose a stronger crossover, I guess. Well, put it this way. I felt that my theoretical physics undergraduate degree gave me a really strong basis to then go on and study pretty much anything in the physics terms. And all that mathematical stuff stood me really well for understanding when I've gone into like radar work with radar signal processing and Fourier transforms and all those kind of things. And that all came, I think, easier than it might have been to do it the other way around, which it would have been to sort of do lots of experimental work and then later to try and have to learn all this hard math stuff. Because when you're kind of undergraduate age, when you're doing that work, I think that's the time your brain best soaks it in and best learns it. It's just as you get older, it's more difficult to learn new things. You know, I mean, you can with a bit of effort, but it's more effort. So I think I was happier learning all the hard maths back when I was younger, and the theory stuff stood me in good stead to pick up the experimental stuff quite quickly, hopefully.
Okay, so it's quite useful for a theory person to go into experiments.
It's very useful.
You just do very well for yourself.
But they do tend to get, I mean, I don't know, I haven't spoken to many theorists recently, so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
You've been listening to Insight, the University of St Andrews Student Physics Society's podcast. I was your host, Samuel Lavery. Thanks to the wonderful academics of St Andrews. Join us in the future as we learn more of the people making our education. This podcast was produced by myself and our publicity officer, Connor McBride. To find out more about the Physics Society and what we do, please find us on Facebook or Google St Andrews Physics Society for our website. Goodbye.